Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the Third Eagle of the Apocalypse and the co-prophet of the end times. Now, before we begin, I want to read a message I got from Eggster Guy, and he writes, "Please help me out. I have been accepting of the 465 numerology you presented even in the first video. That is, I did not need your enhanced visuals to get your point. However, what I don't get is what is going on in these verses. As a preamble to part 2, can you summarize the story in Daniel 4 and position your findings before you get into detail? In other words, follow Sales Presentation 101 and tell them what you are going to do, tell them, and then tell them what you told them." All right, Extra Guy, I agree. That is very good advice. Now, the reason I went into the numerology first in Daniel chapter number 4 was to show that it is all about the end times. The 444 sequence symbolizes Barack Obama. The 666, of course, indicates how he will be defeated by the forces of the Antichrist, and the 555 sequence shows how Mary's rosary is the key to defeating the Antichrist. Now, today I want to get into the chapter itself and go through the pertinent verses one by one. The story of Daniel chapter number 4 is really very simple. King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. And believe it or not, 2,500 years later, that dream is of critical importance to each and every one of us, because it prophesies the immediate future that we are all going to face in the 7 years of tribulation. So let's begin with verse number 3. "How great are his signs, and how mighty are his wonders! His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation." Now, of course, this was the first of the 444 sequence of verses. But there's also an interesting factor here in that this is a 3+1 combination. That is, it describes the Trinity. The great refers to God as a Trinity, and the other three factors are part of the great. The mighty refers to God the Father. The everlasting kingdom, because it is everlasting, refers to time, and therefore refers to Jesus. And his dominion is from generation to generation. Now, generation refers to sexual reproduction, and therefore reflects the Holy Spirit. So therefore, even in this very first verse of the 444 sequence, we have another hidden meaning. And as you know, in end times Bible prophecy, numerology is extremely important. End times prophecy comes from the Holy Spirit, and it is meant to be mysterious. It is meant to be understood by a co-prophet such as myself. You need two people to understand apocalyptic literature, the prophet and the co-prophet. And that's typical of the Holy Spirit. He often works through two people, the same way with speaking in tongues, for example. As St. Paul says, speaking in tongues has no edification for the church unless there is someone who interprets the tongues. In other words, it takes two people, just like reproduction. It takes a man and a wife. Two people to understand end times apocalyptic literature. Verse number 5. "I saw a dream which made me afraid, and the thoughts upon my bed and visions of my head troubled me." So now notice that this dream makes the king, the ruler of the entire civilized world at that time, is afraid. He is filled with fear. Notice how similar this is to Barack Obama's dream, as he described in his book, Dreams from My Fathers, as I already described in another video. The similarity between these dreams is very interesting, and it's very meaningful. King Nebuchadnezzar is a precursor of Barack Obama, just as Babylon and what happens to Babylon is a precursor of what will happen to America. Chapter number 4 is all about Barack Obama. This is hard to believe, but chapter 7 is primarily also about Obama, as is chapter number 11. We need to understand the extreme importance of Barack Obama in Bible prophecy, because practically all of Daniel describes the fall of Obama, the fall of the West, and the rise and fall of the Antichrist and the false prophet. Verse number 7. Then came in the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers, and I told the dream before them, but they did not make known unto me the interpretation thereof. Now these four groups, the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers, symbolize the false prophets of the end times. They are not able to interpret Nebuchadnezzar's dream, just as none of the false prophets were able to understand Barack Obama's dream for the last 15 years. Verse number 10. Thus were the visions of mine head in my bed. I saw, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and the height thereof was great. Okay, so now, if you remember, Barack Obama's dream was very similar. Barack Obama saw a huge figure looming in front of him, very similar to this great tree in King Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Verse number 11. The tree grew and was strong, and the height thereof reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to the end of all the earth. Now here we have another Trinity, just as we did in verse number 3. The tree grew. Now that describes all of the following aspects of the tree. And it was strong. Strength indicates God the Father. It reached unto heaven. Now because it's spiritual, that would be the Holy Spirit, and the sight thereof to the end of all the earth. Now Jesus' ministry was to the earth, so that refers to the second person of the Trinity. Now this use of a 3 + 1 = 4 Trinity serves to emphasize the extreme importance of all these verses. St. John often uses the same technique in the book of Revelation. Verse number 12. The leaves thereof were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and in it was meat for all. The beasts of the field had shadow under it, and the fowls of the heaven dwelt in the boughs thereof, and all flesh was fed of it. Now the end time significance of this tree in King Nebuchadnezzar's dream is that it stands for Western civilization. Remember, in the Bible, that kings and kingdoms can be interchangeable. Notice that Western civilization provides everything for its members. It provides shelter. It provides food. It provides beauty. The leaves were fair. All flesh is fed of it. This Western civilization is what is going to be destroyed by the 7 years of tribulation. Verse number 13. I saw in the visions of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher and a holy one came down from heaven. Now this watcher and holy one is an angel. That means that this judgment upon the king, King Nebuchadnezzar, and upon Western civilization comes from God himself. We are deserving of the 7 years of tribulation which we are about to enter. Verse number 14. He cried aloud and said thus, Hew down the tree, and cut off his branches, shake off his leaves, and scatter his fruit. Let the beasts get away from under it, and the fowls from his branches. Now, of course, all these things that happen to the tree, the cutting down thereof, the taking away of the fruit, and all of the produce, all the food, and so on, symbolizes the famine and the war that Western civilization is about to go through. Verse number 15. Nevertheless, leave the stump of his roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and of brass, in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts in the grass of the earth. So now these next 3 verses, that is 15, 16, and 17, describe the Antichrist, the false prophet, and the one world government and one world religion. In other words, the 7 years of tribulation. This is what follows the cutting down of Western civilization. Notice that the stump is left, and the 2 bands around the stump, the bands of brass and iron, symbolize the one world government and the one world religion. These 3 verses are extremely important, and I will be continuing them in my next program. Now, Extra Guy, I hope I did a little better this time. You need to understand I come from a family of teachers, but I am not a teacher myself. I was an engineer, but I am getting better, I hope. So, and if you would like more information or a free copy of my book, Revelation Unraveled, simply write to the address you see on your screen.